Have you ever stopped in front of a classic car and thought that, without knowing exactly why, it was simply beautiful? Not fast, not aggressive, not technological, beautiful in a way that feels almost impossible to recreate today. There was a time when cars were not designed to meet regulations, follow trends, or look like one another. They were designed to move people, to communicate status, elegance, and personality, even when standing completely still. The lines were long, fluid, intentional. Every detail had a clear purpose, and every brand aimed to create something instantly recognizable. Back then, design was not an extra. It was the heart of the car. And that's why many of those models have aged better than almost any modern vehicle. They don't need explanation or context. Their beauty is understood instantly, even decades later. In this video, we're going to explore some of the most beautiful American cars ever designed. If you're passionate about classic cars and timeless design, like the video and subscribe to the channel, because today we're traveling back to a time when cars weren't just driven, they were admired. 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air. This isn't just a beautiful car. For many people, it's the clearest image of the golden age of the American automobile. Even those who know nothing about cars recognize it instantly. And that didn't happen by accident. Chevrolet invested more time and resources into the design of the 1957 Bel Air than any previous model because it understood something fundamental. In the 1950s, a car was a direct extension of lifestyle. At first glance, the Bel Air radiates optimism. Its lines are smooth, balanced, and confident. The rear fins aren't aggressive, they suggest motion, as if the car were moving even while standing still. Chrome doesn't dominate the design. It complements it, highlighting shapes rather than distracting from them. Everything was carefully thought out to make the car feel light, elegant, and approachable at the same time. One of the Bel Air's greatest strengths was its use of color. Two-tone paint combinations became a visual signature, allowing each owner to feel that their car had its own personality. In a post-war America embracing consumption and progress, the Bel Air wasn't just transportation. It was a statement of prosperity and optimism. Under the hood, the Bel Air could be equipped with V8 engines ranging from 265 to 283 cubic inches, producing up to 283 horsepower in its most powerful configurations. Very respectable numbers for the era. But what's interesting is that Chevrolet never marketed it as a high-performance car. The priority was smoothness, comfort, and the overall driving experience. The deep, steady sound of the V8 was there to accompany the journey, not to dominate it. The interior reinforced that philosophy. Spacious, bright, and well-finished, it offered a sense of openness and comfort that perfectly matched the exterior image. It was a car designed for families, long trips, and everyday life, but with an elegance that made every drive feel special. Today, the 1957 Bel Air remains one of the most desirable classic cars in the world. A well-preserved example can range from about $60,000 to $150,000, depending on condition and configuration. Yet its true value goes far beyond price. It represents a unique moment when design, optimism, and ambition move forward together. Perhaps that's why the Bel Air didn't age like a simple old car. It aged like a symbol, one that reminds us there was a time when cars weren't bought only out of necessity, but for how they made you feel every time you looked at them. 1955. Ford Thunderbird. The Thunderbird was not born as a sports car in the European sense, nor as an early muscle car. Ford was very clear from the beginning. The Thunderbird was created to be something different. A personal luxury car, focused on driving pleasure, style, and presence, not on chasing raw performance numbers. In an America that was falling in love with the automobile as a symbol of success, the Thunderbird appeared as an elegant and sophisticated answer. It was a two-seater, yes, but it wasn't radical. Its lines were clean, proportional, and smooth. It didn't shout speed or aggression. It communicated class, confidence, and a clear sense of exclusivity. This was the kind of car you'd see parked in front of an upscale hotel, not on a racetrack. Under that long, perfectly balanced hood, Ford installed a 292 cubic inch V8, about 4.8 liters, producing around 193 horsepower. It didn't sound outrageous, but combined with the car's relatively modest weight, it delivered a very pleasant driving experience. The Thunderbird accelerated smoothly, responded confidently, and felt agile for a car focused on comfort and style. On the road, the Thunderbird offered something few cars of its time could balance so well: relaxed, quiet, refined driving, with enough power to feel confident and decisive when the driver asked for it. It wasn't a car meant for racing, but it never felt slow either. It was a car meant to enjoy the road, the sound of the engine, and the feeling of driving something special. The interior fully reinforced that philosophy. Individual seats, a comfortable driving position, well-integrated chrome details, and an atmosphere that made the driver feel like the center of the experience. This was a car designed for the person behind the wheel, not for carrying crowds. Every drive felt personal. Its success was immediate. Ford initially planned to sell around 10,000 units in its first year, but ended up producing more than 16,000 Thunderbirds in 1955 alone. The message was clear. The American public wanted luxury, design, and character, even more than extreme performance. Today, the 1955 Thunderbird is one of the most sought-after classics of the 1950s. On today's market, a well-preserved example typically sells between $40,000 and $80,000, depending on condition and originality. But beyond price, its real value lies in what it represented. It created an entirely new category and proved that beauty and elegance alone could be enough to captivate an entire generation. 1958, Chrysler 300D. This is one of those cars that seems calm until you understand its story. Unlike many luxury models of the era, the 300 was not conceived purely for comfort or show. It was designed with a very clear intention: to combine absolute elegance with performance no one expected to find in such a refined car. Visually, the 300D commanded respect without exaggeration. Its design was sober, muscular, and confident. A long hood, straight lines, perfect proportions, and a front grille that spoke volumes without raising its voice. No extravagant fins, no unnecessary decoration. It was elegant because it didn't need to prove anything. But the true character of the 300D lived under that massive hood. Chrysler equipped it with a 392 cubic inch V8, capable of producing around 380 horsepower in its most powerful configuration. In 1958, those numbers were simply extraordinary, not just for a luxury car, but for any American production car. Acceleration was forceful, yet never abrupt. The 300D pushed forward with an almost intimidating authority, always maintaining a sense of control and stability. It could easily exceed 125 miles per hour, something very few cars of its era could even dream of. And it did so with an unsettling calm, as if speed were not an effort, but its natural state. On the road, it felt solid, planted, and surprisingly precise for its size. It wasn't soft or floaty. Its suspension tuning inspired confidence, especially at high speeds. This was the kind of car that invited you to cruise fast for hours, without fatigue and without drama. It also left its mark in competition. Its success in NASCAR proved it wasn't just an elegant car with a big engine, but a truly capable machine. It won races and respect, something almost unthinkable for a large luxury coupe at the time. Today, the 1958 Chrysler 300D is considered one of the great icons of the American automobile. On today's market, a well-preserved example typically ranges between $90,000 and $150,000, depending on condition and originality. And now, I want to know what you think. Do you believe the Chrysler 300D was one of the most elegant cars ever combined with true high performance? Or is there another 1950s classic that better represents that balance between luxury and power? Leave it in the comments, because what comes next proves that Chrysler wasn't the only brand capable of achieving that perfect mix. 1959, Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz. By the late 1950s, Cadillac wasn't competing with any other brand but itself. Its goal wasn't to be better than the competition, it was to define what absolute luxury meant in America. And the Eldorado Biarritz was the purest expression of that ambition. Long, low, covered in chrome, and crowned with rear fins so exaggerated they seemed pulled straight from the space age, this car looked more like a moving sculpture than a conventional automobile. The proportions of the Biarritz are almost theatrical. The wide, commanding front end is balanced by a rear that openly defies any idea of restraint. And yet, nothing feels chaotic. Every line, every curve, every chrome detail exists for a reason. This wasn't excess by accident. It was excess as a design language. Under the hood, the Eldorado was powered by a 390 cubic inch V8, producing roughly 345 horsepower. In a car weighing well over 2 tons, that power wasn't meant to feel aggressive, it was meant to feel authoritative. Acceleration was smooth, constant, almost unshakable. The car never seemed to strain. It simply moved forward, as if the road existed to serve it. The interior reinforced that feeling of uncompromising luxury. Leather, chrome, space everywhere, and a ride quality so refined that the outside world seemed to fade away. Driving an Eldorado Biarritz wasn't a sporty experience. It was an experience of presence. It was about arriving, not racing. Today, the 1959 Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz is considered one of the most beautiful and extravagant cars ever built. A well-preserved example can easily exceed $200,000, especially in convertible form. But beyond its price, what makes it unforgettable is what it represents. The absolute peak of American design without fear of excess. 1961, Lincoln Continental. If the Bel Air represented the optimism and joy of the 1950s, the Continental represented something entirely different: silence, authority, and absolute elegance. This car was not designed to please everyone. It was designed to command respect without ever raising its voice. At the dawn of the 1960s, Lincoln made a radical decision to completely break away from the visual excess that had defined the previous decade. No exaggerated fins, no unnecessary chrome, no overloaded lines. The Continental embraced clean surfaces, long proportions, and a design so restrained that, at the time, many people didn't know how to interpret it. Today, that same restraint is precisely why it's considered one of the most beautiful cars ever designed. Everything about the Continental feels intentional. The straight lines, the low and wide body, and its almost architectural presence make it feel more like an industrial design object than a traditional automobile. It doesn't try to attract attention. It receives it inevitably. That minimalist approach was deliberate. Lincoln wanted to create a car that would age gracefully long after trends disappeared. One of its most iconic features is the rear hinge suicide doors. They weren't just a styling trick. They reinforced a sense of ceremony and importance. Every entry and exit felt formal, deliberate. This wasn't a car meant to rush. It was a car meant to arrive with presence. Under the hood, the Continental carried a massive 430 cubic inch V8, producing close to 300 horsepower. It wasn't designed for aggression or spectacle. Its mission was to move a heavy, solid, extremely well-insulated car with absolute smoothness. Acceleration was progressive, nearly silent, and that mechanical calm reinforced a feeling of total control. On the road, the Continental didn't feel fast, and that was the trick. The stability, sound insulation, and ride quality were so refined that speed became almost invisible. It was easy to travel much faster than you realized, wrapped in a spacious, sober, perfectly balanced interior. It's no coincidence that this model became one of the most recognizable presidential cars in history. It represented exactly what the United States wanted to project at the time: security, confidence, power, and calm, without exaggeration. Today, the 1961 Lincoln Continental is considered a masterpiece of automotive design. A well-preserved example typically ranges between $60,000 and $120,000, depending on condition. And what's most interesting is that after this exercise in absolute minimalism, the next car on the list takes American elegance to the opposite extreme. 1956 Oldsmobile 98 Holiday. This car was never conceived to be sporty or to impress with numbers. It was designed to communicate status, refinement, and the clear feeling of having reached the top. At first glance, the 98 Holiday commands respect. It's large, long, and perfectly proportioned. Its lines are elegant and confident, with chrome used in a balanced way, never excessive. It doesn't try to grab attention aggressively, it simply exists, and that alone is enough to stand out. This was the kind of car associated with success, stability, and confidence. Oldsmobile was at one of the strongest moments in its history, and the 98 was its flagship model. The holiday version, with its pillarless hardtop body, offered an especially clean and sophisticated silhouette, reinforcing the idea of flow and prestige. It was a car built for travel, to be seen and to last. Under the hood, this elegant giant hit a 324 cubic inch rocket V8, producing around 240 horsepower. By the mid-1950s, that was more than respectable, especially for a comfort-focused luxury car. But the real focus wasn't peak power, it was smoothness and low-end torque. The 98 didn't rush. It glided, moving forward with an almost hypnotic ease. On the road, the experience was exactly what you'd expect from a car of this class: smooth, quiet, and extremely stable. The suspension was tuned to isolate occupants from the outside world, turning every journey into something relaxed and almost ceremonial. It was easy to maintain high cruising speeds with no effort at all, wrapped in a constant sense of calm and control. The interior felt like a rolling living room: wide seats, quality materials, clear instrumentation, and an atmosphere that encouraged enjoying the journey more than the destination. Everything was designed for comfort, for arriving rested, with the feeling of having traveled in something truly special. Today, the 1956 Oldsmobile 98 Holiday is one of those classics that often goes unmentioned, yet perfectly represents the spirit of classic American luxury. On today's market, a well-preserved example typically sells between $30,000 and $60,000, depending on condition and originality, a price that reflects not only its elegance, but also its historical importance. 1963. Buick Riviera. This was not simply a beautiful car, it was a deliberate break from everything Buick had done up to that point. In an era dominated by fins, excessive chrome, and visual exuberance, the Riviera appeared as something completely different: low, long, clean, and intentionally modern. Its design was a clear statement of intent. Buick wanted to prove that American luxury could be sophisticated without being exaggerated. The Riviera's lines were taut and elegant, with an almost European silhouette, yet without losing the presence and authority expected of a large American coupe. There was nothing superfluous about its bodywork. Every line seemed to be exactly where it needed to be. Unlike many cars of its time, the Riviera didn't feel like a product of fashion. It felt like a car designed to last. And over the years, that's precisely what turned it into one of the most admired designs of the entire 1960s. Under the hood, Buick stayed true to its classic philosophy. The Riviera was powered by the famous 401 cubic inch nailhead V8, about 6.6 liters, producing around 325 horsepower. It wasn't an engine designed to rev high or sound aggressive. Its strength was torque, that constant refined surge that made the car move with surprising ease. On the road, the Riviera delivered an experience very different from other luxury coupes of the era. It felt solid, stable, and surprisingly agile for its size. It didn't float or feel soft. Buick aimed for a clear balance between comfort and control, and the result was a car that invited you to drive it, not just be driven in it. The interior perfectly matched that character. Clean design, clear instrumentation, wide seats, and a driving position that made the driver feel connected to the car. It was luxury, yes, but with a clear focus on the person behind the wheel, something uncommon among large American coupes of the time. Today, the 1963 Buick Riviera continues to be admired for its design, though many still underestimate what it was capable of in its day. On today's market, a well-preserved example typically ranges between $45,000 and $80,000, depending on condition and originality. 1965. Pontiac Bonneville. This car occupies a very special place in American automotive history. It wasn't designed to be extreme or purely sporty, but it also refused to settle for being just another luxury car. It represented the exact moment when elegance, size, and performance began to coexist naturally within a single automobile. From a design standpoint, the Bonneville already showed a clear evolution away from the excesses of the late 1950s. Its lines were longer, cleaner, and more horizontal, conveying a sense of solidity and modernity. There was less chrome, fewer unnecessary ornaments, and more intent. It looked powerful even at rest, without needing exaggeration. At that time, Pontiac was redefining its identity. The brand wanted to move away from a conservative image and prove it could offer cars with real character, without sacrificing comfort or prestige. The Bonneville was the ultimate expression of that philosophy, a large coupe or convertible built for those who wanted to travel in style, but also enjoy a convincing mechanical response. Under the hood, the Bonneville could be equipped with very respectable V8 engines, the most iconic being the 389 cubic inch unit, capable of producing around 325 horsepower in its most powerful versions. It wasn't built for racetracks, but its acceleration was firm, immediate, and far more energetic than its elegant appearance suggested. On the road, the Bonneville delivered a very balanced experience. The suspension was comfortable, ideal for long journeys, but without the overly floaty feel of some other large luxury cars. It maintained high cruising speeds effortlessly, felt stable, and gave the driver a constant sense of control and confidence. The interior reinforced that character perfectly. Spacious, well-finished, and comfortable, yet with a driving position that didn't completely isolate the driver. There was a genuine connection to the car, something Pontiac always aimed to preserve. It was luxury, yes, but with a clearly more dynamic attitude. Today, the 1965 Pontiac Bonneville is considered one of the last great representatives of American luxury, with a sporting spirit, just before muscle cars fully took over the scene. On today's market, a well-preserved example typically sells between $30,000 and $60,000, depending on condition and configuration. Throughout this journey, one thing became very clear. American beauty was not an accident. It was intentional. Each of these cars was born in an era when design mattered as much as engineering, and when an automobile was not just a means of transportation, but an extension of personality, status, and the dreams of the person behind the wheel. Now, I want to hear your opinion. Of all the cars we saw today, which one do you think was the most beautiful? Which one would you proudly park in your garage if you could choose only one? Leave it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey through the more elegant side of the American automobile, don't miss the next video on the channel. There, we explore another fascinating facet of this golden era, with cars that push luxury and character to an even more extreme level. It's the perfect complement to what we've just seen. Thank you for joining us once again. See you on the next journey through history on wheels.